We're filming this when my hair is still wet, and I feel like that's just very indicative of how this month went for me. Hey guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my September reading wrap up. I wanted a very casual feel for this video because I could not be bothered to like properly prepare to film, if that makes sense. This month has been hell for me, like a good hell. I like to be busy, but also just like I haven't slept in 3 days. With that said though, by some miracle, I still managed to read 6 books. And even though that's literally half of what I read in August, I read 12 books in August, I gave high ratings to almost all of these books. Actually, now that we're talking about it, let's just jump straight into the stats. I had 1 3-star read, I had 4 4-star reads, and one of them was a 4.5, and then I had 1 5-star read. So overall, like quality wise, I think this month was really good. And I definitely have thoughts on all of these books. I'm excited to talk about them with you guys. So yeah, I'll have them all linked down below in the description if you want to go check them out, as well as my previous wrap up, because I had a lot more to talk about in that video if you're interested. If you're new here, hi, my name's Katie. Welcome to my channel. I'm happy to have you here. And other than that, let's just get straight into the books. So the first book that I read this month was A Lesson in Thorens by Sierra Simone, and this was one of my 4-star reads. If you're surprised by that, I was shocked. This is like a polyamorous romance, but I went into this book not knowing very much about it, except that people said it was like wild and there were like orgies in it, and it had basically sounded like the plot of the movie Eyes Wide Shut, if you've seen that. And so that's what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be trashy, fast to read, and kind of stupid. And I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. This book was actually surprisingly really well written. I loved the writing in here, the atmosphere, the sense of place. We're in this fancy manor, I think on like the English countryside, and I just could picture everything so well. Like I felt like I was there, and it was such a unique and vivid setting. I don't know why I always associate like romance novels and just kind of like the trashy, steamy books as not necessarily poorly written, but the writing isn't what you notice about those books. Like it's just kind of neutral, you don't really pay attention to it. But this book in particular, I was surprised that the writing was actually kind of beautiful. From like the first page I noticed it. I was like, oh my god, like what have I gotten myself into? This is good. And so the book is basically about these 6 people who grew up together as children. They like played together and stuff and then went their separate ways, and they're all from different places. Like some of them are from England, some of them are from the United States, and they haven't seen each other in years and years and years, but all of their parents used to be friends. And then tragedy started to strike like each individual family. People started dying, and I don't know exactly how many years later. I think our main character is in her mid-20s when they all go back for different reasons. Basically, the owner of the house, which is one of the former children that they were friends with, Auden, like hires them all to do different things. Like our main character is a librarian, and so she's going through all of these rare books. One of them is like a landscaper, like things like that. And basically they start looking into the history and the past of Thornchapel, the manor, and they find weird shit about like rituals that people used to do there and decide, haha, let's do this. Give us a 4 out of 5 stars. I would recommend this if you like romance, and especially if you like kind of weird sex scenes. It's not like that wild, honestly. I expected it to be more like shocking, but for what it was, this was pretty freaking good. I enjoyed myself tremendously. I was reading this book actually when I hurt my foot. If you missed that whole story time, I had to get stitches in my foot and I was like in bed for 2 weeks because of it. And so this book really got me through that because I just was so into it. I read it in one sitting when I couldn't move. With that said though, I'm currently reading the sequel. I started reading the sequel in September and I'm still not done with it, and it's really bad. I'm not even done with it yet, and I've heard people say that the ending is what they hate the most, so if I already think it's bad, I can only imagine how much worse it's gonna get when I finish this book. So if you want to read this one, I would recommend it, but I wouldn't bother with a sequel if I were you, unless you're like curious because you want to know how bad the ending is, because that's why I picked it up. Yeah, good writing, honestly, pretty interesting characters. There were some like really cringy, kind of stupid things about it. They have all of these conversations about whether or not they're going to do this ritual, and they're like talking themselves into it, and the dialogue in those scenes is so cringy. It's so inconsistent with the way that the rest of the book is written. I forget whose review was I reading on Goodreads of this book that like nailed it on the head. I think it may have been Chandler who said that those scenes read like a bad porno, and like she's not wrong. Like their justification for doing this, it was so stupid. Like you all just wanted to have sex together. That's basically all that's happening, and you're trying to make this like grander reason to do this. It was kind of stupid, but overall I would still recommend the book. So moving on, I feel like I talked about that book for a really long time. The second book that I read this month was my least favorite read, and it's the reason why I didn't read more this month, because it took me forever to finish this book, and because I wasn't enjoying it, I just like wasn't in the mood mood to read because I didn't want to read this book. So I just like went a week and a half without reading anything. It was The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. I was so disappointed by this. I've liked a lot of Holly Black's books in the past. I really liked the Cruel Prince series. I like The Coldest Girl in Cold Town. The White Cat series, Curse Worker series is pretty good. The third book in the Cruel Prince series is coming out in November, and I wanted something to kind of fill the void until that book got here. This is the only Holly Black book that I owned that I haven't read yet, and it's set in the same world as the Cruel Prince, but we're following these two siblings, Hazel and Ben, who live in this small town that's kind of like hand in hand with the fairy world, and everyone's aware of the fairies. And basically it's like a tourist attraction. Like people come because of this, because this is what the small town is known for. And there's this fairy encased in this like glass case in the forest who's been asleep forever, who's like a prince who everyone goes to see, and then one day he wakes up. Yeah, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. There's nothing technically wrong with it. I just really wasn't into it. It was just fine. It was just bland. Someone commented on one of my videos, whoever it was, you were so right, saying that the book just felt so vague. I feel like that's such a good word to describe this book. It's pretty short considering it's a standalone fantasy. It's like barely 300 pages, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if it was done well, but I can't help but think that might be why it wasn't great, is because things felt like not rushed or underdeveloped. It was just like, I don't know, I just wasn't into it. It was just okay. If you're gonna read one of Holly Black's books, I would just really recommend pretty much any of her other stuff over this one. This is my least favorite one of hers that I've read so far. I didn't really care about the characters. I definitely didn't care about like the romance going on in here. I just had no interest in it. I would recommend a pass on this one, unfortunately. I had really high expectations for it and I was very disappointed. After The Darkest Part of the Forest, I read a book that I loved, and this one got me back in the mood for reading for the month. This one saved the month, and that was The Arrangement by Robin Harding. This is an adult thriller. This book is so stupid, but it was so much fun and addicting, and I couldn't put it down. I loved it just because it was so fast to read, and I couldn't put it down. This book is about a 21-year-old art student living in New York City. She's from a small town. She doesn't come from a lot of money, and she learns from one of her friends about the whole like sugar daddy, sugar baby scene, and she's about to like be kicked out of her apartment. Like she's really desperate for money at this point, and so she decides to go on this website and kind of see what's going on, and she ends up forming this sugar daddy relationship with a married man, but she doesn't know that he's married. And we're jumping back and forth between her point of view and the sugar daddy's point of view, so we get to kind of see what he's thinking as well. And I don't usually like when we jump back and forth between like the two main point of views, but this book, it was done well. I really think it couldn't have survived without the point of view of the sugar daddy. Like getting that insight into his thoughts I think was so important to the development of this story. And so basically she ends up falling in love with him, and when he tries to break things off she goes kind of crazy. I've been in a huge thriller mood lately, so this was just exactly what I was in the mood for. It was so fast and easy to read. I think I read this in like a day or two. I really don't think the title or the cover does it justice. Like this book was just so fun. Like it was so visual. I could easily see this being turned into like a movie. It's not super unique, it's not super special. Like there's a million thrillers just like this one, but I didn't know very much about like sugar daddies or sugar babies, and there's a lot of like little insights into this whole like culture that I didn't know anything about, so I was just like intrigued. I was like, they do what? Like there's all of these like little niches, and like, oh, it was so like disturbing but interesting. It's a pretty short book too. Again, less than 350 pages. It's not the best thriller I've ever read, but sometimes you're just in a mood for a book that you can read in one sitting, and this is exactly that. Highly recommend this one. After The Arrangement, I read a fun book. This one was much younger reading, a lot more lighthearted. It was Paranormal by Kiersten White. This is the first book in a trilogy, and it's young adult, obviously. And it's about our main character, Evie. I think she's 15 or 14. It's definitely the younger side of YA. And she has this ability to see supernatural creatures in a way that other humans can't. And so she works for this paranormal containment agency where she basically like hunts down supernatural creatures like vampires, werewolves, and stuff, and brings them in to be like processed and neutralized so they can't harm society. And it's also a paranormal romance, and this was just really cute. It was really lighthearted. It was really fun and fast to read. It reminded me of the kind of books that I loved when I was younger. I think this is great to read this time of year, very like Halloween-esque. It kind of reminds me of like the movies I would watch on like Disney Channel for Halloween, you know? So just very fun, very lighthearted. I was thinking I want to continue on with the rest of the series, but my library doesn't have the second book. They have the third book, but the second one is just like not in the system, so I might have to pick up the second book. It's not my favorite thing that I've read, but it was like a nice change of pace. I feel like I've been reading a lot of like heavy, dark books where people are murdered and stuff, and so just jumping to this where it's like, oh, this cutesy paranormal romance. It was just a nice change. After that, I read our book club pick for September. If you didn't know, I run a book club. I'll have the link down below in the description if you want to join us for next month. In October, we're reading 2 books actually. One officially, one kind of unofficially. The official book club pick for October is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and then the book that I'm just planning to read in October, and I told people like read it with me if you want to, and maybe I'll post like a book talk of it, was The Coldest Girl in Coal Town by Holly Black, which is a reread for me. But anyway, September's book was Sorcery of Thorens. Reading Sorcery of Thorens and A Lesson in Thorens in the same month has really just confused me. This one I gave, I think, a 4 out of 5 stars to on Goodreads, but it's more like a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved this. It was fantastic, but there was just something in me that didn't want to give it 5 stars. There's something about 5-star books for me. I give them out pretty rarely just because if I don't absolutely love something, it's like not something I can put into words as to why I give something a 5-star rating. It's like this feeling. Basically, if it's not a new like all-time favorite book, it's not gonna get 5 stars. So basically what I'm saying is if I give something a 4-star, it's a 5-star for pretty much anyone else. I'm just really picky. But Sorcery of Thorns follows our main character Elizabeth, and she wants to be a warden of the library. So basically there are these huge libraries that host grimoires, and the grimoires can turn into like monsters, and the wardens are in charge of like keeping track of all of that. And then there are sorcerers. And so weird things start happening where some of these grimoire monsters are getting loose and people suspect Elizabeth is behind it. And so she ends up teaming up with this sorcerer named Nathaniel to try and figure out what's really going on. And like I said, I give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. I actually had a really hard time getting into it at first. I like picked it up and set it down, I think 3 times before I finally managed to get through it. But that was just like the first 3 chapters. I don't know why I just couldn't get through the first 3 chapters, but after that I was all in. There are definitely things that were wrong with this book. Like I could sit here and pick apart any book. There were just like a couple of weird moments in this book where it like went places for like 2 seconds and then came back. I loved the romance between Elizabeth and Nathaniel. I thought it was really cute. I thought he was really witty and funny, and it was just like fun to read their banter. I've seen a lot of people going crazy over the character Silas in here. He's got quite the fan base, and I did really like his character. I found him to be the most intriguing of all of the characters. He is Nathaniel's kind of servant, and he's a demon. And the whole book you're kind of going back and forth on whether or not he actually cares for Nathaniel and Elizabeth and has like this sense of humanity, or if he's only doing things out of duty. Yeah, honestly, I feel like I need to reread this one to really like solidify my opinion on it, because I keep going back and forth. It's not a new favorite of mine, but it was a very solid YA fantasy, especially considering it's a standalone, and it is something that I would reread. I did enjoy it that much. My favorite thing about this 100% is the world. I feel like a lot of YA fantasies have just really similar like interchangeable worlds, but the world building in here I found very unique, and also it was very well done. Like it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't super confused at the beginning. I feel like the world building was sprinkled in very subtly and very slowly in a way that it was very easy to grasp it and to understand it as you go. Because I'm someone where if I can't understand the world, or if it's all just thrown at me at the beginning, I give up on fantasies because it's just not my thing. And I feel like this one, basically this would be very easy for people to read even if you don't like fantasy. Okay, so then the last book that I finished in September was my favorite book of the month. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and that was Layer of Dreams by Nevaeh Bray. This is the sequel to The Diviners, and this book was freaking brilliant. A masterpiece. Perfection. So freaking good. 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, only goes to like new favorites. This isn't a new favorite. I knew it was gonna be a favorite because The Diviners was so good. But this one, in my opinion, was better than The Diviners. Really freaking good. I'm really excited to read the 3rd book in the series. It's on my TBR for October. If you don't know what the series is about, it's this mystery set in the 1920s. We're following our main character Evie, who is a diviner, meaning she has this special power, sort of like a psychic power. When she touches an object that belongs to someone, she can see their secrets. And we dive more into the world of the diviners in Layer of Dreams. We kind of get to learn the different types of diviners there are, and that they're more common than we might have thought in the 1st book. The 1st book is all about trying to catch this serial killer who's going through New York, and in this book we're watching this epidemic unravel of a sleeping sickness. So basically people are falling asleep and getting trapped in their dreams and then never waking up until they eventually die from it. And I think this book is so smart. It's everything I love in a book. It's super spooky, it's super creepy, it's perfect for around this time of year. We're following so many different main characters and it's such a diverse cast of characters, but it's also so socially relevant. Like it's tackling things that actually did happen in our past, just with like a little bit of a twist to it, like the way that the Chinese are treated in this book. I just loved it. I loved everything about this book. The only thing that was hard for me is it's so long and it took me so long to get through it, and it's so complex and there's so much going on with it. So it took me forever, but that's not a flaw for the book. It's so well developed. It's so well done. All of these threads come together. Like it could not have worked any other way. It needed to be this long. And as I was saying in the reading vlog I was filming at the time, like I was looking at the publication dates for all of the books in this series and they've been coming out like 2 or 3 years apart from each other. And usually with like series, they come out like once a year or something. And there's no freaking way she could write these books in a year. There's so much, like I don't even know how she plotted this book. The whole time I was reading it, I was like thinking of it as a writer and I was trying to imagine outlining this book and I was just like, Jesus, this would be so freaking hard. There's so much going on. There's so many different storylines and you can see, like I haven't read the 3rd book in the series and the 4th one comes out next year, but I can see these like seeds of like foreshadowing and like what she's trying to get to, and I'm just like, she must have planned this so much. I'm impressed. I'm in awe, obviously. I'm just fangirling over her plotting ability. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. The only, if I had like a flaw with it, is I enjoyed some of the character stories more so than others, which I think you always risk when you have so many different point of view characters. So sometimes when we were reading from certain characters, I was just like, I don't really care. I kind of want to get back to that storyline, you know? She definitely couldn't have done without all of them. All of them were very necessary. So all of this is to say, if I haven't already convinced you to start this series, please do. And if you weren't like a huge fan of the Diviners, I really do think this one is better. I just had an absolute heart attack. My camera died while I was in the middle of talking, and the last time that happened, it deleted all of the footage up until that point, and I had been talking for 20 minutes at that point and I thought I was gonna have to refilm this whole video, but we're good. I think we're good. I was basically done talking anyway. What was I saying? If you read the 1st book, didn't love it, try the sequel. I think it's better. I think it's worth pushing through the series. There's also, I believe, a read-along going on for the series with Emma Books, Monica from She Might Be Monica, and Sarah Without an H. So if you want to participate in like a read-along right now, check their channels. I'm pretty sure they have something going on all the way up until the release of the 4th book, which comes out in February. So you've got like until then to join if you want to. So yeah, those are all of the books that I finished in September. I would say this was a pretty successful reading month, especially given everything else that was going on in my life at this time. You guys don't even want to know. But yeah, I would love it if you would let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I'm always interested to hear your opinions, or tell me what your favorite book that you read in September was. I would be very interested to know so I can add it to my ever-growing TBR list. I get comments sometimes of people saying like, I don't know if you want recommendations down in your comments. Like, please, always, like, you're free to comment literally anything that you want, but I always love seeing recommendations. I will never turn down a recommendation. It might take me forever to get to it, but I will add it to my Goodreads. I think my favorite book of the month, like quality wise, was Layer of Dreams. This is the best book that I've read this month, but like enjoyment wise, I don't know, I enjoyed all of them, but I really liked the arrangement, and I also ended up really liking Sorcery of Thorns. And A Lesson in Thorns, honestly, was just a nice change. I haven't read anything like that this year. You guys know I've been trying to like read more romance this year and get into it, and this one was very different. To put it lightly. So yeah, that's gonna be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching if you've made it this far. I've been talking for a while. But yeah, if you're new here, I would love it if you would subscribe and stick around. I put up at least 2 new videos every single week. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up because it helps out my channel a lot. My Instagram, second channel, all of those links are down below in the description if you want to come follow me elsewhere. Other than that, I think I'll just see you guys in my next video very soon. Bye.
So hit me. So hit me. So hit me. First a confession. With you, I feel a connection. With